So, welcome to today's deep dive. We're so glad you're here with us.
Yeah, really excited to get into this one. It's a topic that I think hits close to home for a lot of people.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Because, okay, have you ever found yourself, just sitting on your couch at the end of a super long day?
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
Right. And someone you love walks into the room, they look at you, and they just ask something incredibly mundane.
Something like, what do you want to do this weekend?
Exactly. Or, like, why did you put the keys on the counter? Just totally normal question.
Yeah, totally harmless.
But suddenly, out of nowhere, you feel this overwhelming, almost crushing sense of exhaustion.
It's like a physical weight just drops onto your shoulders.
Yes. And it's not that you're mad at them or that the question is offensive, but your brain just it halts.
You're just sitting there thinking, I cannot possibly answer that right now.
Exactly. Well, if you have ever experienced that sudden, totally disproportionate fatigue from a completely normal interaction, you're absolutely not alone.
Not at all.
Today, we are unpacking a fascinating piece of writing by Dr. Jaime Hoerricks, and it actually proves that this exhaustion isn't just in your head.
Right. It's an actual measurable metabolic toll.
So we're going to use an excerpt from Dr. Hoerricks' Substack. It's titled Episode 561, WH Questions and the Cost of Compression, The Hidden Load.
And the mission today is to figure out why mundane conversation drains you so much.
Yeah, and why your body's reaction to it is actually a crucial warning system, not a flaw.
What I really love about Dr. Hoerricks' work here is that it's grounded entirely in the physical reality of communication.
Yeah, they aren't talking about, etiquette or social rules.
Right, exactly. This piece doesn't really deal with the sociology of how we socialize. It stays remarkably close to the body.
Staying close to the body, yeah.
It focuses on memory, on neurological timing, and what the author calls the hidden load.
The hidden load. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure. So it looks at the biological reality of what happens inside a person when a demand for information is placed on them.
Specifically, the demand of a WH question, right? Like who, what, where, when, and especially why.
Especially why, yes.
I really want to focus on those WH questions because, we tend to think of them as the most basic building blocks of conversation.
Right. We literally teach them to toddlers.
Exactly. But the title of this piece brings up, the cost of compression.
The author argues that these quote-unquote simple questions might only ask for a single-word answer, but they force a massive operation underneath the surface.
Yes. When I was reading this, I kept picturing a computer file.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Imagine you have this incredibly complex 100-gigabyte folder of high-definition video files on your desktop.
Right, taking up a ton of space.
Yeah. Contains all your memories, your context, your reasoning for a specific event. And someone says, hey, can you just email that to me?
And an email attachment can only hold, what, a few megabytes?
Exactly. They just want a tiny 1 megabyte attachment. But to get that 100-gigabyte folder into an email, your computer has to compress it.
It has to zip the file.
Yeah. And what happens? The cooling fans start spinning at maximum speed. The processor heats up.
The whole system basically freezes while it crunches the data.
Right. The final product looks tiny to the person receiving it, but your internal processor is absolutely overheating to create it.
That zip file analogy really works, but
Yeah.
there's one major caveat that makes the human experience far more taxing than a computer.
Oh, really? What's that?
Well, unlike a computer, human memory isn't filed neatly in labeled folders.
Oh, right. We don't just have a weekend plans folder ready to go.
Exactly. When someone asks you, why did you make that decision at work today? Your brain doesn't just pull a single document from a shelf and compress it.
It's way more chaotic than that.
It has to scan an incredibly chaotic environment. It pulls from scattered emotional states, past experiences, the specific social dynamics of your office.
And your own internal anxieties on top of all that.
Yes. Dr. Hoerricks refers to this activation as a massive internal weather system.
An internal weather system. I love that phrasing.
You are compiling all of this disparate data, filtering out what the person asking doesn't need to know.
Which is a lot of work in itself.
Oh, completely. And then you're trying to translate this multi-layered internal experience into a linear spoken sentence that adheres to the rules of English syntax.
And you have to do all of that in about a second and a half.
Which introduces the timing aspect, right? That's a critical component of the text.
Because you can't just take 5 minutes to answer what's for dinner.
Exactly. You are under an unspoken social time constraint to perform this massive data compression.
Yeah, if you pause for 4 seconds before answering a question in the break room, people assume you are hiding something.
Or that you were rude, or that you simply weren't paying attention.
The demand isn't just to compress the data, it's to compress it instantaneously.
And that leads directly to the concept of the metabolic cost.
Okay, let's stay on that for a second. Because metabolic cost shifts this from, just a psychological feeling to a biological fact.
It makes it very real, yeah.
What is actually happening in the body when we are forced to compress this data so quickly?
Well, your brain, despite only making up a small percentage of your body weight, consumes roughly 20% of your body's energy.
20%, that's huge.
And runs on glucose. So when you are hit with the WH question, answering isn't merely a mental exercise, it is a biological task.
So it's literally burning fuel.
Exactly. Your brain is forced to suddenly spool up, fire millions of neurons across different hemispheres to retrieve memory, assess social threat, and formulate language.
That sounds exhausting.
Because it is. That process burns actual glucose. It consumes physical energy.
So when you feel exhausted after what seemed like a quote-unquote simple conversation, it isn't a metaphor.
No, not at all. You have literally expended a significant amount of biological energy.
Wow. But the person asking a question doesn't see any of this.
Right, they have no idea.
They don't hear your internal cooling fan spinning out of control. They just see you hesitate to answer, like, what do you want for dinner?
And because all of this heavy lifting is invisible, it leads to a massive misunderstanding of our own capabilities.
Which brings up a very specific, really powerful phrase in the text. Dr. Hoerricks refers to the people experiencing this acute exhaustion as unsupported adults.
Yes. The text explores how these unsupported adults end up mistaking the intensive survival labor they are doing in conversations for a personal failure.
Okay, I want to push back on that word failure for a second, or at least break down why the author uses it.
Sure, let's look at it.
Because if I go to the gym and lift heavy weights for an hour, I get exhausted. I mean, I am doing hard physical labor.
Right, your muscles are tired.
But I don't go home, sit on the couch, and think, wow, I am a personal failure because my arms are tired.
No, you know exactly why you're tired.
Exactly. I just recognize that I did something objectively difficult, and now I need to rest.
Yeah.
So if ordinary conversation is a heavy metabolic lift, aren't people just recognizing that they are tired from talking? Why does it cross over into this internalized feeling of being a failure?
What's fascinating here is, well, to understand the use of the word failure, we have to look at the societal context in which ordinary conversation occurs.
Okay, the societal context.
We don't view casual chat the way we view lifting weights at the gym. Society treats answering WH questions as the absolute baseline of human existence.
Right. It's supposed to be as easy as breathing.
Exactly. It is framed from birth as completely effortless. So if you are an unsupported adult,
Meaning what, exactly?
meaning someone whose neurocognitive processing style isn't supported by the standard rapid-fire mode of communication.
Right.
If you're an unsupported adult, you are doing intense, hidden survival labor just to get through a simple chat.
Wait, let me pause you there, because neurocognitive processing style sounds a bit like, medical jargon.
Sure, it can sound a bit clinical.
Are we talking strictly about people who are neurodivergent here, like those with ADHD or autism, or is this a broader concept?
It heavily encompasses neurodivergent individuals, definitely, but it applies to anyone whose brain indexes and retrieves information differently than the perceived norm.
Okay, so how might someone process information differently?
Well, some people process the world through highly associative, nonlinear frameworks.
Meaning they don't just go from A to B.
Exactly. When they hear a question, their brain maps 50 different related concepts before narrowing in on an answer.
Oh, wow.
And if the environment demands a linear 1-second response, that person's processing style is fundamentally unsupported by their environment.
So they have to kind of fake it.
They are forced to mask their natural thought process and artificially speed up, which dramatically spikes the metabolic cost.
So they are lifting heavy weights, but society is telling them they are just holding a feather.
That is the crux of it right there.
Wow.
Everyone around you in the break room seems to be holding that feather with zero effort. They're betting yes or no and who, what, where questions back and forth like a casual game of tennis.
Meanwhile, you are sweating and biologically depleted just trying to keep up.
Yes. And because society insists it is just a feather, you don't think, wow, this feather actually weighs 100 pounds.
You think, there is something fundamentally broken in my arms.
Exactly. You internalize the exhaustion not as a biological consequence of complex data compression, but as a character flaw, a failure to be normal.
That is so heartbreaking, honestly. You believe you are failing at the most basic human task.
When in reality, your brain is successfully executing a highly complex, metabolically expensive process. The failure is a complete illusion created by the social expectation of speed.
Okay, so if our minds are so thoroughly tricked into misinterpreting this immense effort as a personal failure, how does the body react?
The body has its own ways of speaking up.
Right, because usually the body knows what's going on long before the conscious mind catches up.
Oh, definitely.
If the brain is burning through glucose and overheating, I imagine the body doesn't just quietly take the hit.
It doesn't. The body always steps in when a system is being pushed past its limits.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Dr. Hoerricks actually addresses this directly in the text with a gentle note to the reader.
Oh, I remember that part.
The author acknowledges that because the essay goes so deep into internal mechanics, just reading it might trigger a physical reaction.
Right. They list 4 specific somatic responses that occur when the conversational load becomes too heavy.
Yes, and those are really important to recognize.
The text says, if you feel yourself beginning to tighten, float away, go blank, or become suddenly over-alert.
Those 4 reactions are profound somatic markers.
A somatic marker, meaning what?
A somatic marker is essentially a physical sensation that acts as an alarm bell for your nervous system.
Okay, let's break those down, because going blank is something I think a lot of people relate to.
I know I do.
I had moments where someone asked me a mundane question, and it literally feels like a web browser crashing.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
The screen just goes gray. I'm not thinking about the answer. I'm not thinking about anything. My brain just entirely empties out.
That browser crash is your nervous system intentionally dropping the connection.
Intentionally, wow. What about tightening up?
When you tighten up, your muscles are literally preparing for a physical threat because your brain is registering the conversational demand as a danger.
That's intense and floating away.
Floating away, or dissociation, is the mind trying to detach from a metabolic demand it can no longer fund.
So it just sort of unplugs.
Exactly. And going blank, like you mentioned, is the system halting all non-essential processes to prevent a total crash.
And the last one, becoming over-alert.
Becoming over-alert or hypervigilant is an adrenaline spike trying to compensate for the lack of available glucose.
Wow. The author offers this reframing of these physical reactions that really changes how you look at them.
It's a very empowering reframe.
Yeah, they write that is information, not failure. They refer to these physical feelings as weather reports, not fresh demands.
Weather reports, not fresh demands. It's so good.
Think about how liberating that is. Like, if you look out your living room window and see a massive rainstorm rolling in, you don't get angry at the sky.
No, of course not.
You don't view the rainstorm as a personal failure of the weather or a failure of your house.
You just observe the information. It is raining outside.
Exactly. And you adapt. You grab an umbrella, or you decide to cancel your outdoor plans.
The weather report isn't demanding you fix the rain. It's just giving you data.
Right. Similarly, if your mind goes blank in the middle of a conversation, you shouldn't get mad at your nervous system.
Treating somatic responses as weather reports requires a massive shift in perspective, but it is highly practical.
Because the nervous system isn't sabotaging you.
Not at all. It is actively protecting your hardware from overheating.
And the text doesn't just leave the reader with this theory, right? It offers actionable advice.
Yes. What to do the moment you feel yourself tightening or floating away?
Which is what?
The instruction is to slow down, put the piece down, and circle the block.
Just literally stepping away from the demand.
Stepping away, yes. But the internal framing is the most vital part.
How so?
The text says to let your nervous system know it does not have to prove anything here.
Oh, that is powerful.
The reason we push through the exhaustion, the reason we force the compression even when our browser is crashing, is the desperate need to prove our competence.
We want to prove our normalcy. We want to prove that we can handle a simple WH question just like everyone else.
Exactly. And the moment you internally tell your nervous system that it doesn't have to prove anything, you immediately lower the metabolic demand.
You stop the forced compression.
You stop the forced compression.
Okay, so if our bodies are intentionally dropping the connection to protect us from overheating, what is it about these specific types of questions that causes the overheating in the first place?
That's where we get to the structure of the question itself.
Because why does a question like why trigger a system failure when a question like did you might not? The excerpt we're looking at is actually the second piece in a series. And the text mentions that the first essay focused on a threshold problem.
Yes. It names the hidden cost of being, quote, asked in the wrong shape.
Asked in the wrong shape. So what does that mean?
That phrase addresses the structural root cause of the exhaustion. Dr. Hoerricks leaves the excerpt with a cliffhanger, asking, why can a prompt that appears tiny carry so much weight?
Based on everything we've unpacked, how do we define the architecture of that cost?
The answer lies in the architecture of the question itself.
Let's explore that architecture. To me, it feels like trying to pour a gallon of water through a coffee straw in 3 seconds.
Okay, I can visualize that.
The water is all the context I hold in my head. The coffee straw is the tiny WH question.
And the 3 seconds is the social pressure to answer immediately.
Exactly. The architecture of the straw fundamentally restricts the volume of water, and the pressure causes it to explode everywhere.
That metaphor illustrates the mechanical friction perfectly.
Because the shapes don't match.
Exactly. If someone asks you a yes or no question like, did you lock the door? The architecture of that question provides a binary path.
Your brain just scans one specific recent memory, retrieves a yes or a no, and delivers it.
Yes. The shape of the question matches the shape of the answer. But a WH question, specifically why, is infinitely open-ended.
You'd have absolutely no boundaries.
It's a vast, unmapped territory.
Like if my partner asks, why did you choose that paint color for the hallway? They might just think it's casual conversation.
Sure.
But internally, my brain is attempting to categorize 20 different variables.
Was it the lighting in the store?
Was it the price? Am I remembering a house I liked as a kid?
Does my partner actually want the full design philosophy, or do they just want me to say it was on sale?
Exactly.
Look at the sheer number of systems you just activated to answer about paint colors.
It's a lot.
The tiny prompt forces the unsupported adult to simultaneously navigate 4 complex processes. First, there's memory retrieval.
Right, digging through your internal archives to find the origin of an aesthetic choice.
Exactly. And second, you're doing timing and audience assessment.
Figuring out how much detail they actually want.
Right, evaluating that while maintaining the socially acceptable rhythm of a conversation.
Without making it weird.
Yes. Then third is internal translation.
Taking a nonverbal, conceptual feeling about a color and forcing it into linear vocabulary, that alone is so hard.
It is. And finally, the fourth process is somatic monitoring.
Managing the physical anxiety that arises from juggling the first 3 tasks under a time limit.
Exactly. And you are doing all of this just to produce a single, seemingly simple sentence.
The architecture of a WH question is essentially a structural demand for massive, instantaneous data compression.
When you are forced into a conversational shape that doesn't fit your internal processing architecture, of course it's going to cost you.
The friction between the open-ended nature of the question and the demand for a compressed, linear answer is what generates the heat.
No wonder we end up sitting on the couch feeling like we've run a marathon just from chatting about our weekend plans.
Seriously.
Which brings us back to the core thesis of the hidden load. The effort is completely invisible to the person asking.
But the biological toll on the person answering is entirely real.
Entirely real.
So bringing this all together for you, the listener, if there is one thing you take away from this dive into Dr. Hoerricks' work, let it be the validation of your own exhaustion.
Yes, absolutely.
Ordinary conversation takes real, measurable metabolic energy. When someone asks you a tiny WH question, you are not just fetching a word off a shelf.
You are executing a massive internal compression of memory, context, social evaluation, and translation.
Your brain is actively burning glucose to make that happen.
And when your body reacts to that heavy lifting,
When you feel yourself beginning to tighten up or float away, or your mind just goes completely blank,
those reactions are not personal failures.
they are not character flaws or signs that you are broken.
They are valuable weather reports from your internal weather system telling you that the metabolic load is currently too high to sustain.
Exactly. And just like the author advises, your nervous system does not have to prove anything to anyone.
You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to step away and circle the block.
You do not have to force the 100-gigabyte file through the tiny email attachment right this second.
I think, if we accept that these invisible mechanics govern our interactions, it leaves us with an important consideration regarding how we treat each other.
Oh, that's a great point.
We spent this time dissecting the hidden load placed on us when we are asked these simple questions. But communication is a shared environment.
Right, it goes both ways.
If WH questions carry such a heavy, unseen metabolic cost, how might we rethink the way we ask things of our friends, our partners, or our colleagues in the break room?
Could we actively design our prompts differently?
I think so. It is worth thinking about how we can reshape our inquiries so that they act as gentle weather reports for each other rather than fresh, overwhelming demands.
That is such a beautiful thought to end on. Next time you go to ask a casual why or what, maybe pause and think about the hidden load you might be handing the other person.
And more importantly, the next time your brain crashes from a simple question, remember to be kind to your own nervous system.
It's just trying to keep the processor from overheating. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.